Man.
Hello and welcome to a Thursday edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and as usual on Thursdays, we are going to do an opponent preview. We will talk about Miami with Mark Salva, Jerry Cutts, and Charles Fishbein. I do believe Kurt Weiler is going to join us at some point, but we also have a very special guest today, and former FSU tight end Pat Carter. He will join us about midway through the show to talk a little bit about his new book of poetry called The All-American Poet by Wendell Pat Carter. It's got some great memories of his time at Florida State in that book. And so we will definitely be talking with Pat about that. He's going to join us about halfway through the show. All right, guys. Well, Mark, first of all, we're glad you got a chance to join us. We did not know whether you would be able to because you were traveling, and Fish has got a tight schedule today. But let's get right into it, guys. Florida State's got and welcome, Kurt. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Sorry, totally lost track of time. Wasn't looking at the
That's
clock.
all right. We knew you'd jump on at some point. And Kurt watched about 429 plays of offense this week, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But that's like a Sunday for me, Kurt. That's like a Sunday.
Hey, not quite. That's like 3 Sundays.
Well, no, I go through 300 plays in a 100 play game because you got to watch it back and forth.
I guess okay.
But, yeah. I'm just saying it's a long. Whatever my point is, it's a long day. All right, guys. So Florida State's going down to Miami, 1-6, 1-5 in the ACC as a 21-point underdog to a Miami team that's 7-0 and has the number one ranked offense in the nation, number one ranked quarterback in the nation. And, I just put up my scouting report on the Osceola.com. It's there with a lot of analytics and some questions for how this staff is going to try to pull off one of the biggest upsets, certainly of this college football season and maybe in this series, the history of this series. But Fish, you've kind of been more familiar with this team than we are. You've seen them practice. You know the roster probably better than all of us, but just my evaluation of this thing is this is a very, very tough matchup for Florida State. When you start breaking down what Miami does on offense with Cam Ward and what Florida State likes to do on defense, which is play man coverage, turning your back to Cam Ward is not a winning recipe on defense, and that's what Florida State likes to do. And then defensively, Miami's really good. Listen. You can say what you want about their passing game defense, but they've only given up over 200 yards passing 3 times in the entire season. And one of those times was the USF, which is a very unique offense to prepare for. Another one of those teams was Louisville last week, and Jeff Brom is probably one of the elite play callers in college football. And you can write off Cal as an outlier in that group. But Fish, just your thoughts on this game as Florida State gets ready to head to South Beach.
Yeah, I mean, after I watched Miami practice 4 times in the spring and also in the fall, everything you've seen is exactly what we thought. Their secondary was a major question mark, and it's been a question mark during the season. But I also think defensively, their coach, because they want to get possessions to Cam Ward and get the offense back, that they take a lot of chances that maybe they shouldn't, and because they want to get more possessions for their offense. So they'll have breakdowns on that side of the ball. So you can take advantage of that. I don't know if Florida State can, but they can. Most good offenses can. But Miami, the one strength they have that's a major strength and Florida State hasn't been able to show the ability to stop is guys that can move. And Cam Ward's the most mobile quarterback they're going to face that could also throw. Last week in Duke, they faced a quarterback that basically was a statue. This week's the total opposite. It's a 180. Cam could beat you with his arm. He could beat you with his legs. He could beat you with both, like you saw last week, where he rolled out he's getting pressured, and he threw an unbelievable pass in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. So it'll be interesting to see how FSU defends him and what they're going to do on defense, because he creates a lot of problems for any defense.
Yeah, you mentioned Cam Ward as a runner. Obviously, he is the nation's number one passer, touchdowns, yards. He's like third or fourth in completion percentage. But when you look at the run game, and if you look at their run tendencies, number one, they're a left-handed team, which is weird for a right-handed quarterback. They like to run to the left. That's where their best offensive linemen are. But if you were to break it down, scrambles, Cam Ward has gained 270 yards on scrambles, and if you put that into the run game tendency, that is where they make a ton of yardage. 23 rushes for 270 yards this year. Kurt, you've seen Florida State practice this week, and I saw them on Monday. You saw them on Monday and Wednesday. How do you think this team has prepared for this game, and what are your expectations for Florida State heading down to South Beach?
I mean, the expectations kind of can't be good, right? Like, you never know. Weird things can happen in a rivalry. We saw a 27-point favorite lose last night. Like, weird things can happen.
That was crazy.
But I don't think any of us are. I kind of said going into last week, with the quarterback change, I thought you saw some promising things with Brock. I kind of was telling some people and saying, I'm not going to pick Florida State to Miami, but there's a world where they can give them a game. And sure, it's still possible. But after that Duke performance, my confidence in Florida State keeping this close fell off pretty considerably. I mean, I think they had a fine week in practice. I don't think it was a bad week in practice, but it's one of those funny situations. Trevor Jackson's a pretty good scout team quarterback, but using him to be your Cam Ward stand-in that you just can't prepare for a guy like Cam Ward, because if you had a guy like Cam Ward, he wouldn't be on the scout team. He'd be your first team quarterback. He would be tearing up the scout team defense. So I think they've done as well as they can. I think there are some areas where, Miami's given up a lot of points the last 3 weeks. I think the problem is nothing we've seen from Florida State offense makes us think they're going to be able to put up enough points to stay with a high-powered Miami offense in this one.
Yeah, and the other thing, Kurt, on that is, you look at where Florida State has done well defensively this year, and where it's dominated teams is when they have really bad offensive lines. And we've seen them dominate Memphis. They played well enough to win that game on defense. Obviously stole the show against Cal, and really had a winning defensive performance against Duke. So unfortunately, Miami's pretty good on the offensive line. So we'll see if the trend holds up. And plus, the other thing I think Florida State has on defense, they've been good at stopping teams that don't do anything well. Whereas if a team does one thing well on offense, Georgia Tech run, Boston College run, Clemson did both things well. They just didn't throw the ball a lot, and then SMU did what they wanted. So I think it's a tough matchup. But Mark, bring you in here. I know you're sitting on the side of the road somewhere between Memphis and Nashville. What are your thoughts on the game, and even more so, maybe coming from a former player's perspective? Can this be a game that lights a fire into them like maybe they haven't? I mean, we all say it's a long shot, but these rivalry games can be funny at times.
Yeah. I mean, if there hasn't been a sense of urgency up until now, it's a little late. But look, I look at this. We all say styles make fights, right? Styles make fights, and the things that they are the places they are vulnerable, we can't really take advantage of. Cam Ward's ability to extend plays and scramble, it's not just his running, it's avoiding sacks, right? And, if he's extending plays, covering the middle of the field, sticking with the receiver, sticking with the strepo is going to be key. I don't know if we can do that. We're going to have a really disciplined rush. Can we do that? Then offensively, obviously, there's issues. Look, again, styles make fights. They like the blitz. We don't handle the blitz very well. We haven't done it. In fact, that's been the book on FSU is, stifle the run, and then I'll make it, a long yardage situation to convert, and then blitz the crap out of them, and they, things go crazy. We can't deliver the ball. Even in off times that we do, we can't catch it. So there's a lot looking at it objectively to say that, it's going to be a long road to hoe, but, it is a rivalry game. It's Doak South and all that mess. I mean, I don't know. I would think that there's been a sense of urgency here, in the last several weeks, and it hasn't seemed to help. I think the critical thing is that, and I hope in practice that this is the case, that the coaches have laid out a realistic path to victory, right? If we do these things, X things, we have a chance to win the game, get it to the fourth quarter, and then anything can happen.
Yep.
And if the players buy into it and work towards that end, you have a chance. But it's got to be really clearly defined in the players' heads about that path to victory. And I know part of it's going to have to be contain Cam Ward, cover the middle of the field, and be able to handle the blitz. Those three things to me are going to be critical in this game.
Yeah, and what's weird is they've been able to get a lot of their pressure without bringing it from the second and third level, and of course, when they do bring it, they've been successful. Some of the way Duke has been all season. Jerry, I know that you're not going to the game for the first time since I don't know when. I don't know how long it's been, but I know we've got something going on in Tallahassee for all the folks that will be in Tallahassee for the game. You want to tell them about it?
Yeah, we got an event at Glory Days, game watching event. So come on out. Glory Days is going to give away some free coupons to get some wings at another time, and give away some free $30 gift cards, and there'll be a bunch of stuff. And it's a good chance for Seminoles to gather and cry on each other's shoulders a little bit about the season, and cheer on the Noles on Saturday and hope for the big upset.
Now, this is actually I guess I'll start with you first. You've seen a lot of these games. Have you ever seen, has there ever been a game in this series where, at least going into it, it seemed to be as one-sided as this, particularly from maybe even just looking at it from a pure point spread perspective?
Yeah, I would say, well, I don't know about that. I don't remember point spreads very well. I've never gambled, so I've never paid attention to them. But I think there's been times where there's been big upsets in this series.
Yep.
I know we've been upset in this series a number of times, and I think we've surprised them a time or two as well. So,
Jerry, the one time Florida State was this big of an underdog or close to it was in 2002. FSU had lost to Miami, lost a lot of guys in 2001 for 2002, and that 2001 team got blown out by Miami, I believe it was, and then in 2002, Greg Jones just had an unreal game with Nick Maddox down in Miami. I think Florida State was like a 10 to 13 point underdog in that game. So
Florida State was a 14-point underdog in 2018. Willie's first, and remember that game they were up 27-7. DJ Matthews returned a punt for a touchdown, and then Miami surged back and won 28-27.
I'll go back to 1984. I'll go back to 1984, 38-3. We beat them down there. They had just come off a national championship, and Jesse Hester on a reverse for a touchdown. And I don't know what the spread was, but I know they were big favorites.
Orson Mobley or Zeke, one of them had a big game that day too.
Zeke Mowat.
Zeke. I think it was Orson. It was Orson. 84.
No, he wasn't on that team. That was before that.
So that was 82. He had the big.
Yeah, it was 82.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Kurt, we know one thing that's going to have to take place. Listen, I think we all know about the challenges of this running game that Florida State has or does not have. But one of the things that we've seen a little bit of improvement in, at least. I shouldn't say that. There's 3 turnovers, so it's not really true. But we've been impressed with the way that Brock Glenn tries to at least push the ball down the field, and he can buy some times with his legs, which he'll have to do. But you did an article early this week on what's really going to be key. Florida State's receivers are going to have to step up if FSU has any chance of knocking Miami off, because the reality of it is where they're going to have the chance to make the most hay in this game is in the passing game, based on what the analytics and based on what we've studied. What did your research tell you about the receivers, and what did you see this week that might give you hope that position group takes the next step?
I mean, what the research showed me is, they've left a lot of yards. They've left a lot of points. Points are harder to calculate, but you do feel like when you have a reliable field goal kicker like Ryan Fitzgerald, who hasn't been credited with a miss this year. They changed his miss in the Duke game to a team miss because of the bad snap, bad hold. And D didn't really have a chance to hit that. I think you can easily see a world where Florida State's left 30-plus points on the board. I mean, one dropped touchdown, but there are other ones that would put them in prime scoring position, and who knows what happens from there. When you're factoring in, I mean, you can't factor in yards after the catch, but I counted about 250 yards, not counting anything after the catch. I think it's easy to say they could have had 350, 400 more passing yards after the catch. But the truth is, the drops have been a big problem. But watching every offensive play this team has had this year drilled home to me that the drops wouldn't, if you eliminate the drops or greatly reduce the drops, it doesn't suddenly make this a great team. I mean, the offensive line's been a mess. There have been a bunch of quarterback misses. They've struggled at times with turnovers. You know, I mean, it is not the one thing. It is a major thing, but like it is not the one thing that is slowing down this offense. That being said, I mean, we've heard about for weeks. Luane McCoy's been listed as a co-starter. Elijah Moore's been listed as a backup. I thought those two, especially Elijah Moore, had great weeks of practice. Mike Norvell praised both of them Monday and B.J. Gibson Monday for how good they've been. I mean, I think it's a tough situation to throw them into for sure. But I don't think we think the Miami secondary is the strength of that team. It feels like it has to only be a matter of time before you at least give them a slight chance. None of those freshman receivers have gotten so much as a target. I don't think Elijah's played yet whatsoever.
I don't think he has either.
So, yeah, I think Luane and BJ have played some. They haven't yet had a pass thrown their way. So, I mean, that to me is like can they bring something? Because we've seen it more and more consistently on practice. I think you've seen Elijah Moore, who didn't get here until the summer in particular. You've really seen the hit rate be higher and the mistakes type things drop off in the last few weeks. So whether that's this week or the next couple of weeks, I think that is something you could see of just like you can't keep trotting the same guys who've made mistakes out there and expect them to stop making mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jerry, you're always the guy that kind of brings the silver lining to the gray skies of the Osceola when we go through some of these not so favorable conversations. Did you see anything this week at practice that gives you some optimism that maybe this team can pull off the unexpected?
I'm going to just second what Kurt said about the future for that receiver core. That stood out to me that there's some I don't think it'll show up this week, but I think when you look at that young receiver core, Kurt and I were adding it up, and I think we got to 4, and then when we walked outside the building, Fryer was there, with the Club Med group rehabbing from an injury, and you had Destin Hill there. And
Yep.
So if I was going to find a silver lining, it would be in the fact that you might be able to fix that receiving core by next year. And
No, I was talking about for this week.
No. Well, I know what you were talking about. You asked me for a silver lining.
They're 1-6. We're talking about next year. They're 1-6.
No, I don't see. There's. Hey, Pat, if we saw something on the practice field that was good, we've seen that every week.
That's true. Listen, it's hard to. Sometimes it's harder to know exactly what you're seeing just because we're not seeing, as I've said 1,000 times now since we all started getting ripped for our misevaluation of the defense coming out of camp. Every site has been ripped about the lack of dominance of the front line, and then obviously there was some, I guess everybody oversold DJU a little bit as collective sites, but so we've all been getting ripped for that. But it's hard. Sometimes it's harder to tell on certain days than the others, and we know there's going to be days where just the sheer reality of how football is. Some days guys are going to have good days, some days are not. I mean, it's a hard sport to bring it every day in practice. But
hey, listen, I deserve to be ripped pretty much every day, but we did caution that you can't tell what you got until you play somebody else.
Yep.
And what I've always said about that too is we were not alone leading that charge. I mean, there was all the anonymous NFL scouts and people who watch a lot of college football who were talking about the talent on this team. So it's not like we were white knighting a team that no one else thought deserved white knighting.
And the third greatest college football coach of all time said they had NFL talent on the defensive front. So if the third greatest college coach in the football of all time, Nick Saban, can be wrong. We can all be wrong. All right, Mark, let's go to you. You've not only played in this game, but you've been a college football coach. As Kurt and I have talked about a little bit, the deficiency, if you want to call it that, in Miami's defense is its passing attack. They are really good against the run, really good, like top 10 in America. I believe they're 8th. And you got an offense that really can't push anybody of any substance around on the run game. And how do you go about trying to attack this defense if you're Mike Norvell?
You got to run enough to make them honest. But
Does that mean the first play of the game?
Well, maybe. No, seriously, you got to run enough to make them honest. I don't think we're going to expect to generate any big yards in the running game, haven't all year. But one thing that they can do pretty well is that they can protect the passer if all things being equal. I mean, not all the time. It's the one thing they kind of do okay. Now, what they don't do real well is pick up the blitz. What they haven't done, where there have been deficiencies, are in the coordination of picking up the blitz, right? Not just the linemen getting the right guys and the backs getting the right guys, but the quarterback knowing where to go with the ball and the receivers making any kind of adjustments that need to be made. I don't know the scheme of the offense and how they do that and how they communicate that, but that has to be honed to a gnat's behind, right? Because that's, like I said, styles make fights, but what they're vulnerable in, we have not shown the ability to get to. And that's, if they're vulnerable in the secondary, which it looks like, they take chances, and that does leave you vulnerable. Can we take advantage of that? We haven't up to this point. Doesn't mean we can't. All right. Look, the other thing is you got to play mistake-free football. You got to take care of the football. You can't have dead ball penalties. You can't have a positive play get sent back because of a holding, because of bad technique or misalignment on offense, or plays getting in late where we get 5-yard penalties. That stuff you got to eliminate all that stuff. You got to take that stuff off the table, and then maybe you have a chance. The bottom line is we got to produce points. Take care of and that's going to come on the defense some too. Because I'll say this: if we can cover the middle of the field, which we haven't, but it's going to be critical because they like to throw it to Restrepo, and they like to throw it to the tight end, and how that nickel linebackers and safeties, how they cover the middle of the field is going to be critical. And like you said, you just can't turn your back all the time. When you're doing your pattern reading and you get a vertical release and then you turn your back looking for a flat route, you got to keep your eyes on the quarterback a little bit, and you got to read his eyes, and you got to anticipate some things. They got to have some stuff in the mix to really shore that up, and that means defense is going to have to come up with some takeaways. That's one thing we've been real deficient in. Defense has got to, because Cam will float one every now and then, right? I see him float a couple. And some have been picked. Well, he doesn't have very many. I think he only has like 5. But coming into the Miami, I know he had a propensity to maybe float some if he got under some pressure. So supposedly we got some good defensive linemen. If they can press them and keep them in the pocket and make them panic a little bit, we can cover the middle of the field, maybe get a turnover, and that maybe puts the offense in a position to where we can get some short fields and generate some points. I mean, that's the really only path I see where we can win. But it starts with us and our ability to pick up the blitz and eliminate the bad plays.
Yeah. Listen, I think it's going to be the challenge that you said it was, and maybe they find. Listen, what I'd like to see them do, I'd like to see them leave Lawrence Toafili in the game a hell of a lot more than what they're doing. He's your best offensive player. His missing in action for the better part of 2 quarters in the Duke game is just crazy. That he came out in the middle of that game like as much as he did. I think that.
But if you put him in the game and they scheme it to where he has to stay in and blitz and do blitz pickup the whole time, what are you getting? I mean, is he a better pass protector than Cam Davis? I don't know. Cam's freshmen generally are notorious bad pass blockers.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Cam's come a long way in that, though. I will say he was not very good when we saw him in the spring, and he's come a decent way.
Well, then I have a suggestion. I have a suggestion. Put Cam in the game at running back and move Lawrence Toafili to the slot.
Or put them both in the game at the same time.
Don't take him out of the game.
It does bear mentioning.
Yeah.
We don't know. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a good answer to your point, Pat, is put them both in the game. right? And that way you have 6 blockers for the blitz. And if you guess right and you start getting a little pattern, you can scheme it to where you can get Tola on a free release, and now you've got him on linebackers or nickelbacks, right? And that's a good answer. It also maybe helps pick up an extra blocker for the running game where you can run some leads. I think running some leads and some stuff where you got a lead back or a lead tight end. I think are some things that can help you, because now you can double team up front a little bit. If you can get a lead blocker, now you can get a guard center double team or a tackle guard double team, and maybe generate some running game. So there's things you can do if you get creative enough and gives. Here's the whole thing: you got to present some problems to the defense. You just can't line up in 3 wides, 1 tight end, 1 back, and just free release everybody. You got to present some problems schematically.
Yeah. I'd like to see them come out in some exotic formations and do a little wildcat from that every now and then. And
I mean, what's exotic? I think
a little Henry and Henry.
Anything different.
Anything different. Give me listen. What do we got to lose, Mark? What do we got to lose? Hey,
a ball game.
That's true.
It bears mentioning, as we're talking about the offense, we don't know if they're going to have Cam Davis or Darius Washington. Both of them suffered injuries in that fourth quarter at Duke, and Mike Norvell is pretty non-committal about their status. He gave pretty generic what he does. We'll see how that goes as the week progresses. But that if you're without those two, it changes the offense pretty dramatically too.
That's true.
Well, we'll get more of the youth movement that we've all been asking for. That's for sure. All right, Tish, you've been around this program. Like I said, you've been around Miami's program a lot. Let's switch back over to the offense. We all know about Cam Ward. He's a Heisman Trophy favorite, probably one of the top 3 right now, outside of the kid at Colorado and the kid at Boise State. But they do have some talent. They're really deep in the backfield. Look like they're deep at receiver. How do you see Adam Fuller attacking this offense?
Yeah, keep everything in front of you, I guess. But and the one thing Florida State needs to do, you talked about Cam. Cam makes some, shake your head moment type plays where he shakes it in a positive way, but he also can go negative. And he had a bad pick against Florida. He had a horrible pick against Cal to start the second half of that game. So Florida State needs to create turnovers, and they haven't done that all year. Like Mark said, everything Miami does well, Florida State's not good at defending. Everything Miami does poorly, Florida State can't take advantage of. So that's going to be the $20 million question. Where is Florida State going to attack them? Because they need to make something happen. I think Florida State is going to have to go after some punts, create something early, and try to get some momentum and try to have Miami playing from behind most of the game. But I really don't know what the answer is with this team that you have showing up for Florida State.
It's a hard discussion. I mean, to be honest with you, it's a really hard discussion.
David Hale had a great thread on Twitter this week about Florida State's defense. They've only forced 2 turnovers in 7 games. They have 3 total, but 1 was a muff punt they recovered on special team. And he talked about, Florida State doesn't get teams in 3rd and long enough and and plays from behind. And those are going to affect turnover luck as it was, where you're not going to, if teams aren't having to pass as much, you're not going to get as many interceptions. Obviously, you're not putting them in predictable passing situations. But also, I think they have 25 pass breakups and only 2 interceptions. That ratio is off. So if there was ever a week for that to flip in Florida State's favor, this would be quite the week.
Yeah,
well, I would say that goes back to a point I've made for several weeks now, is that defensively we don't present problems like teams present us problems. We tend to line up the same way on 1st and 2nd down most of the time. All right, it's generally going to be the 4-2-5, and we're going to play match coverage. Which means we're going to after everybody kind of declares their stem on the routes, we're going to match up and go with it. Right? It's 1st and 2nd down. It's every time, and I think it was the Duke. Maybe it was the Duke game. The game before Duke, SMU. The times we had negative plays were the times that we, put guys on the line of scrimmage, lots of guys in the box, and a guy shook free and made it to TFL. And my question is, why don't we do that more on the other side of the 50 on 1st and 2nd down? Not all the time, but mix it in enough to where you're presenting some problems to the offense to make them react. We don't put any pressure on the defense on an offense by the way we play, especially on the other side of the 50. You know, we got to present some problems defensively. We have some athletes, so I hear. You know, put them in positions to where, you know, they're not having to read and react so much, where they can just chase ball, see ball. You know.
Yeah. Well, it'd be great for AZ and Fintrail to have days that really improve their draft status, because I think they're going to get tested this week, and of course it'll be interesting. They don't do a lot of play action. I think 24% of their passes are play action at Miami, so hopefully that helps defend them a little bit, because as we all know, Florida State has had issues off play action and either pre or post snap motion when the other teams are dragging people across the formation and those kind of things. So we'll see. The good news is I feel pretty good if it comes down to the kicking game. We got Fitzgerald and we got Mastromanno. So if we get, and listen, it's going to be another great game of punters. You got two of the top punters in the country. You got two of the best field goal kickers in the country. So that part will be positive. Yeah.
Hey, if I could interrupt a second, one thing you guys haven't talked about yet is Miami's got a heck of a running back in Martinez, and you got to stop him first, because if you don't, I think Mario can, he'll content himself, I think, to hurt you with that running back.
Oh, well, and they got a deep running back room. It's just not him. They got the kid that started last year for them is back, and then they've got two other backs that you got Mark Fletcher, who's got 299 yards rushing, and then you got A.J. Allen, who had a nice little game against Louisville last week, scored a touchdown. You got Jordan Lyle. Those two guys in third and fourth team roles have gained 414 yards on 55 combined carries, so he's got no shortage of studs in that backfield. There's no doubt about that. So it will be interesting to see how they handle that. All right. Well, listen, we're going to save our predictions for our article tomorrow. I think everyone's got a pretty good idea of the way we're trending. But listen, we're just like everybody else. Lord knows it would be a lot of fun to be talking about a win for a change, and particularly a good win over an in-state rival. And who knows, maybe we'll see the ACC version of whatever conference Kennesaw State and Liberty, Sunbelt. They're Sunbelt, right? Maybe we'll see the ACC upset of the year like we saw the Sunbelt upset of the year last night. And that was kind of – I've never seen – I don't know if y'all saw the end of that game, but they had to clear the field and run a final play with a second, because Jamie Chadwell, who I really like, chose to be thought he was going to complete a 65-yard pass with 1 second to go, and they didn't even throw it downfield. They threw it 10 yards downfield and started running backwards. But so we'll see. But yeah, we will be here on Saturday night after the game about 10:30. Me and Mark and possibly other people. We'll see who joins us, but we'll have our post-game coverage. But listen, we will have our article on our predictions and keys to an FSU upset tomorrow. We just dropped our scouting report about an hour ago, and then Kurt's got his article on the drops that have kind of plagued this offense. And one of the problems, as Kurt very, very well said, stated, is just one of the problems. But we're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to be joined by a very special guest, Mr. Wendell Patrick Carter, former FSU tight end. I call him PC and Pat, but Pat has written a book of poetry called The All-American Poet, and the book we're going to discuss, I don't know if he's written more than one, but he's written one directly related to his career at Florida State. So we're going to take a break for about a minute, and we'll be back and talk with Patrick Carter and Mark Salva about his poetry and then some of their fondest memories of this FSU-Miami rivalry. We'll be back in about 50 seconds.
Hey, Seminole fans. Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI, or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
All right, welcome back to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. And Mark Salva, even when Dan Mowry's not paying us anymore, I'm playing that commercial just for you because I know you love Dan in a bow tie. All right, well, we are joined now by one of my favorite FSU people. He was a great tight end at Florida State and then had a long and distinguished NFL career. Welcome to the show, Pat.
Hey, guys, thank you for having me. It means a lot to me. I always dreamt of being on here. Oh, you got it, huh, Mark? Okay.
Hey, Pat, we need to get you to dream bigger.
Nah, man. Nah, really. I mean, when I was writing this, I mean, you guys are one of the first stops I wanted to make, really.
Well, you always have a spot on this show anytime you want to come on. That is the one thing we will always welcome former players to join us, talk football, whether it's Florida State or just getting general chit chat. But man, how have you been doing?
I've been doing good. I've been writing poetry, but I found out I had the ability to write poetry because my cognitive ability has declined some, and I found myself being able to express myself a whole lot better through writing. And once I started writing, man, it just a volume of poems came out. I think I've written close to about 450 now poems.
Wow.
So how many different books? Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, Pat, I was going to say on that note, I was reading about cognitive impairments, and yours, I guess, is more CTE related.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Some of my friends are dealing with some cognitive impairments, and one of the articles I was reading about it said that any kind of puzzle, anytime you try to solve puzzles with your mind, it helps. And I can't think of anything more challenging from a puzzle standpoint than a poem.
Mm-hmm.
That'll challenge you.
It is challenging, but I'll say it this way. I found it thrilling to be able to try to match another word with it. Because when I write poems, I like my poems to rhyme.
Yeah.
And so I found it challenging, but I've been able to put together some pretty good poems, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
well, I got some.
Don't try to write haikus. I try to write haikus from time to time, and I drive myself crazy with those.
Hey, Pat. Now this book of poems, I've read it. Mark's read it, and I'm really interested. Well, we're going to talk about it because they're all about Florida State in this.
Yeah. Correct.
And the first one is a discussion that Mark and I have had about the 1985 recruiting class.
Correct.
That was not the start of the dynasty era. Mark has convinced me.
Exactly.
And I'll let you talk about that with your poem, 84.
Class of 84.
Yeah, class of 84.
Yeah, I'd use it that way because I could make it rhyme with show.
Yeah.
But anyways, the class of 84, often we get overlooked. When they talk about that era back then, they typically talk about, Dion and Sammy and those guys, Odell, those guys. But, we had a hard hat crew. And, Joey Ionata, Kuipers, Sully, they don't get the love that they deserve. But those were starters on the front. And then I was the tight end. So we had 4 starters up on the front.
Yep.
And then McGowan and Shive, they love to hunt.
Yep.
And so we had a lot of players that contributed to the success of the university. And me bringing in the class 84, I wanted to make sure those guys were acknowledged and recognized and talked about as well, because we played a part in it too.
Yeah, the start of the dynasty started in 1987, which was our senior year, Pat.
Correct.
And so we were the leaders on that team.
Correct.
And, McGowan was the first major award winner.
Correct.
In the university's history. He's class of 84.
Correct.
Yeah. So look, it's that senior class was the one that kicked it off, and that's me and you, brother.
That's right, buddy. And
So
I just
think
wanted to
about
make
that.
sure, that's why I brought the poem in, but I also wanted to introduce a new generation of Seminole fans to the old guys, to where we came from. And, talk about some of the, the Coble Terrace where we live, Miss Betty where we ate.
Hey, by the way, Pat,
Mhm.
you're the first person I know that can actually write something that came out of Coble Terrace can actually be printed in public.
Well, yeah, we I left I put the PG in.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, and by the way, you brought, so many great memories as I went through this thing. Some of the fonder memories. You mentioned Miss Betty. Every time I walk into the Moore Center, I can't help but think that the restaurant they have inside the Moore Center needs to be called Miss Betty's, but people buy the rights to put names on things. They sold that room. But every time I'll never walk into the Moore Center and walk into that restaurant without thinking it should be called Miss Betty's. And one of the things that stands out to me about that is, compare and contrast to what they do today, where they don't eat together a lot. They grab meals where they're leaving. And, how key was that in you guys forming relationships that would end up spurring on this, what was be the golden age of Florida State football? How that particular room and that environment?
Yeah, well, we did so many things together because we lived together, we ate together. Obviously, we practiced, but we spent a lot of time together. And then even outside of practice, we would playing cards, playing video games. So we spent a lot of time together, and we also talked about it, sharing each other's dreams and pushing each other to succeed and be successful. And it's been awesome when you really look back and see some of the guys like Martin Mayhew. We knew Martin Mayhew would do well in life, but I think he far exceeded even my expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the big three as opposed to the Fab Four. That was a good one. I don't think most people realize exactly, it was before the age of internet and computers. And if you didn't get a paper, you didn't read about Florida State, right? You had to be a hardcore fan. But you, Jesse, and Hassan were quite the triple threat in your time at Florida State. You still keep up with those guys?
Sporadic. I talk to Jet every now and then. I haven't spoken to Hassan in a few years, but that poem came about because I found out those guys weren't in the Hall of Fame, and I'm like, wow, I wasn't aware of that. But you can't. I tell you what, you find a collective three that has passed through Florida State at the same time like we did. That's better than us. Yeah,
I'm putting up the cover of your book right now, and if you're a subscriber or listener, please check it out. And Pat, where can they find this book, by the way?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
All you got to do is type in All American Poet or my name, Wendell Patrick Carter, and it'll come up then.
Right. Cool.
And I'm looking forward to it because, like I said, it's going to open a whole lot of new Florida State fans. We'll link them back to the past, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, well, listen.
Pat,
go ahead, Jerry.
Oh yeah. For the young guys, the young people on here that don't know who Pat was, there's a poem in there where I thought that was a coming out for Pat, and that was that Auburn game.
Yes, sir.
And I want to talk about that a little bit to put today into perspective. I think this will help put today into perspective. At the time, I was doing Osceola, and Andy Miller was the president of the Boosters. And we were catching heat. Everybody was in the program because we hadn't won a big game, what the fans call a big game.
Right.
Which Bobby defined as the big game is the one that you lose. All the other games you win, they're not big games. But anyway, we went into Auburn that year, and we had lived in the 1980. That was the best team in Florida State history. Right. And here we're we're now into 1987. We had a stretch there of 6 years that were good, but we couldn't win the big game. We couldn't get over the hump. So for the young fans who don't know about it, we roll into Auburn, and it was a packed house, and they had a great tight end. A great defensive end.
Andre Bruce.
Andre Bruce.
First pick in my draft. And
You made the boy cry.
I don't know if that was me. I'm not going to
I mean, he went to the
was.
bench and he said no mas. I'm telling you, I was a sideline photographer, and those Auburn coaches had a hard time talking him into going back in the game. And
That's the truth. That's not exaggerating. He quit. He flat out would not go back in the game because my buddy PC was wrecking him.
Yeah. Well, that was also a game, though, that Coach Bowden turned me loose as far as, catching some passes,
Yeah.
Coach Bowden, I was really surprised, but they turned me loose that game.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
so talk about that poem. How did that come about? And what did that game make?
I have a good friend, David Rocker. He and I, he's an Auburn alum, and he and I, we talk from time to time. And he told me a story where leading up to that game, one of the older players like, "Hey guys, you better get your mind right. Pat Carter's coming into town." And so I was like, "Dog, so you guys thought of me like that then?" Because I didn't see myself like that. You know what I mean? But obviously the guy used it, and it actually I ended up proving the guy right. Though I came in and had a really good game. And but the poem kind of just came up. It just fell together. But the one thing I remember about that game, I had such a good game, but I heard that I was gonna be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but Derek Schmidt, I got bumped for Schmitty because he ended up being the all-time scorer in NCAA history at that time.
And he was he was from down your way, wasn't he?
Same high school. We graduated together. Same high school.
Yeah.
I tell you that the thing I remember about that game, and I've told the story before, is we won that game 34-3. It wasn't even close.
Right.
We dumped out to an early lead, and they couldn't do anything defensive. And Pat had a big game. But I remember in between the third and fourth quarter, switching sides on the field. We were on the field, and I remember switching sides, and I'm the center, so I'm calling the huddle. And that was really the first time I took a breath, kind of looked around because we had 2 or 3 minutes before the TV timeout was over. And I remember looking up into the stands and seeing the visitor side stands about 30-yard line all the way around 70 yards, and then the end zone where all Florida State fans doing the war chant and all the Auburn people were leaving.
Wow.
I'll never forget that. That to me told me, I said, we got the game, but that was the moment that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
On that game.
The moment I'll never forget was after you all won that game. The boosters had a kind of it was a reward. They rented out a bunch of A-frames, and I got back and nobody was doing much. So I knocked on Andy's door and I said, "Hey, we just won that big game. How come there's not a party?" And so we created an impromptu party.
Good.
That was about like Animal House by the time it was over.
Oh, the real party. Okay.
It was a serious party.
Blew off some steam, huh?
Huh?
Blew off some steam.
Blew off a lot of people had been, calling me at the Osceola, "What the hell's wrong with our program? Fire Bowden." And, the people, Andy was getting it from his big donors. And I think there's 2 stories here that kind of we can relate to today. There was that tension in the program that Bobby couldn't win the big game. And at the same time, the other story y'all just talked about was the 84 class was the genesis of that 87 win.
Correct.
So think how long that took. 84, 85, 86, 87. So you put together 2 great classes that ultimately, fulfilled that win the big game.
Oh, definitely pushed us in the top echelon of college football.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you lined up in 87. There wasn't anybody you lined up against that was more talented than you guys.
No.
Oh, no. Yeah, we were loaded. Yeah, we were loaded.
I think in context,
Miami probably was just as good.
Just as good. And I was getting ready to say, the context there about that Auburn game is about three weeks before we had just lost to Miami 26-25. Miami was acknowledged as the best team in the country. Going into that game, they were 1, we were 2 or 3, something like that. And that was 26-25, and nobody had rushed for more than 100 yards against Miami in, I don't know, 2-3 years.
Right.
And we went out there, and Sammy had 180 yards. Dexter probably had 60, 70. I think we rushed for over 250, almost 300 yards that day. And we lost on that. We went for it after scoring to go down. After scoring to be down by 1 point, and instead of kicking for the tie, I remember calling timeout. And Coach called timeout, and we all, me, you, Danny Mack, we all went to Coach Bowden and said we want to go for the win.
Right.
And it wasn't hard to talk him into it.
No, he wanted it. And you know what? I still got to live with that. And for a while, my next door, he was 2 houses down when I lived in Texas, was Bubba McDowell, the guy who knocked the 2-point play down.
Yeah.
And but one thing I wanted to share with you guys, it should be some glaring omissions in that book. You notice Coach Bowden ain't in this edition, right?
Right.
Yep.
Correct. He's going to be in my second because I have another book I'm working on, and this one has 24 poems. The next one I have 100.
Well, every time I go through it, I find a new favorite. I've got it on the right side of my screen. I keep on scrolling back and forth through them. And but before I go to my, I've got several I want to ask you about. But
okay,
I want to. You guys, since you guys brought up the Miami game from '87, first of all, it drives me crazy that most Florida State's favorite home game is a 31-31 tie. That's what we always hear. The choke at Doak is the best game ever. I think the '87 Miami FSU game was the greatest game that's ever been played in Doak Campbell Stadium. I don't think it's close. But now in the rear view, 30-something years later, do you guys have any regret about going for it, or you think that you guys made the right decision?
We made the right decision. We just didn't execute.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I say that in my next book. I say usually Danny and I are always acute, but on this play we just didn't execute, and we just didn't. That's what it is. And unfortunately, we got to live with that because I really think we were a better team than them.
Oh yeah,
and that's the unfortunate thing.
I remember that Sunday, but I remember for whatever reason driving down to see Dad, and something I very rarely did after a loss because I did not want to be anywhere near him on Sundays at the Moore Center. And I just remember it being a ghost town. And I drove by the Osceola. Jerry and those guys had gone home already. It was late Sunday afternoon and cool, crisp fall day, and it was like tumbleweeds rolling down Pensacola. It was a ghost town. But
now the one thing I remember about after that Miami game was McDuffie came up to me and said, "Good game." And normally after we lose, you don't get that from no McDuffie. You know what I'm saying? So I was actually kind of like puzzled that he said that, but I'll take it, but I was surprised that he said that.
That was the only game ever that I cried after the game. I was visibly upset, and I was sitting in my locker, and Wayne came up to me. Wayne W., our offensive line coach, offense coordinator, notoriously hardcore coach, as hard as anybody that ever coached football.
Clint Eastwood.
Right. That's right.
In bike shorts, right?
That's
and
right.
Just like he came to you, he came to me, and he actually gave me a hug. And he said, told us a good game. I mean, he was proud of the effort we gave because, like I said, nobody rushed for 100 yards. We rushed for 300 against them.
And I bet he wasn't wearing socks.
But he's another one that's not in this book. He's in the other book.
Okay.
But I owe him a lot because the football player that I became was because of him.
Yeah.
And there's no question of, obviously Coach Brad Scott had a hand in it as well, but McDuffie was the ringleader of it for sure.
Yeah. Hey, one of my favorites is King of the Boards.
That's correct.
I forgot that you forget there were so many great players coming through, and I remember obviously I was 15, hanging around practice as much as I could,
right?
And then you bring in one of my favorite Florida State football. Every time I read a name, it's one of my favorite football players. But Gerald Nichols, you bring up Gerald Nichols in this poem, and how you had dominated the defensive ends and linebackers so much that going into your senior year, I guess they made you go against the defensive tackles.
Well, that was my junior year. Gerald was a senior. That was my junior year. Okay. But yeah, I said in the book, the coaches wanted to get a little fickle when it got defensive tackle Gerald Nichols. I guess they wanted to kind of deflate me a little bit because I was kind of walking around like I was King Kong. I was the king of the boards. What they could bring anybody at me, and I was tearing them up. So they put Gerald on me and couldn't do nothing with him.
Yeah,
one of my favorites is 34 Wham.
I like 34 Wham too.
34 Wham. So this was our goal line play. So you have Pat Carter, who's probably the best blocking tight end in the history of our program, I would say.
Mhm.
You had Pat Tomberlin, an All-American. You had Tom O'Malley at tight end, at wing back in between the two.
That's right.
And the rest of us. And we ran that play inside the 5 15 times and
That's correct.
scored 15 touchdowns with Dane Williams.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that's what I said. But that's what I said in the book. I said, what did I say? Coach, defensive knew it was coming. Coach McDuffie didn't give a damn. You know,
Right.
He didn't care. He still was gonna call that play.
That's
right.
It couldn't
Hey,
be
think
stopped.
about those 4 people. I mean, Tomberlin was heavily recruited.
Mm-hmm.
Pat was heavily recruited.
Mm-hmm.
O'Malley was lightly recruited, and
Right.
Dane was a walk-on.
Correct. But we made it work, though, didn't we?
Yeah, you
Yep.
found something you could do well,
Mm-hmm.
and
And exploited it.
exploited it.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not even sure they ever had to signal that play in once y'all were inside the 3-yard line. It was just like,
Yeah, we already knew that was. Yeah, you already knew that was coming. You knew it was coming.
hey, when you wrote
And I used to tell the guys, hey, the defenders, I like, you know it's coming and it's just like Christmas and ain't nothing you can do about it because we're gonna get this work right here.
Hey, let me ask you about the play. What made it work? What was?
This guy right here, Pat Carter, made this play work. When you
Well,
can
I can't single-handedly say that now.
Yeah,
O'Malley
let me tell you
and Dunn, them guys
know.
are bad too now.
you are the rare beast that can block guys like Danny Stubbs, like Andre Bruce,
Yeah,
and plant them in the back of the end zone.
yeah.
And that's a rare
Pat
bird.
says, yeah.
Well, no, because
He
Stubbs,
did.
I did.
Go back to
Hey, the Miami game, I did. Miami.
go back to the Miami that
Yeah,
Miami
he
game
got
on the
hurt.
goal
Yeah, he
line
got worked.
and watch Pat Carter get under Danny Stubbs, pick him up, and plant him 8 yards deep in the end zone on his tail.
Yeah,
That's why that play
that is
worked.
true. Now,
and Danny
I
Stubbs
wish
is
I
a
could
bad
call you a
man.
liar, but no, that's true.
Danny Stubbs is a bad man.
Yeah, he was. He was.
That's
I
why
mean,
that
it had been arrogant to do it on the goal line against Miami with the score, with the game on the line in '87. But as effective as you guys were with it,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
probably should have. You know what? All these years I never thought about that. But
Me
yeah, you
either.
know what? You could. Yeah, we could have ran that from there.
100%.
I
I'm
didn't
sure
even
y'all,
think
I'm sure
about
y'all
that.
had some kind of pass off of it.
Yeah,
That's
but we
that's
were
called
so
overcoaching.
efficient with it. We didn't need a pass. It's just like the Eagles. What's the play the Eagles have now?
Yeah, the tush push.
There you go. That was the same play. It's really almost,
yeah.
But man, I like to really thank you because in the next book I got Danny McManus, Brad Scott, McDuffie, all the other, all the people that are omitted in this one, they're going to be in my second book. But
Yeah,
you remember
I saw that. I
that
saw
was
that
a
at the
good spot.
first. It made me thirsty as soon as I saw the title.
You talk about team building.
Yeah.
Right? This is the only book in America that mentions bladderbust.
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, but that was the first place I had buffalo. I had never eaten buffalo wings. That was the first place I had them at.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
nothing's ever lived up to it since, probably.
But that's why I said they were the standard. And any other wings I had after that, it was like this ain't the first. This is not the first wing. First had some great wings.
It's still a shame they did not make that a historical landmark before they
They should
started
have.
tearing all those damn buildings down on
Totally
campus.
agree. They should have.
Build dorm. They could have put it underneath the dorm, and that could have been a nice eating and drinking place for the students that live in that dorm now.
Yeah, that's true.
I may or may not have met my wife there.
No, rumor has it you did. Rumor, that's what the word on the street is. Now I don't know if that's true. That's
You
word.
weren't sure who she was. but
It's a rumor.
Julie's not going to own up to that. You know that. Julie's not gonna, she's going to say y'all met at church.
that place was owned by George Ward at the time, I think.
Yeah, I believe you're right, Jerry. I believe you're right. And then, of course, listen, it's ironic that we're talking to you on Miami week. And in this book, you got your poem about Pablo. And obviously, I think it's a day, even though I was a coach's kid, I still remember Dad waking me up when he got the call. And I had just gotten back from playing a high school game in Panama City. And I still remember the song that was on the radio. And just talk a little bit about, I know both of you, I mean, listen, he was a he was a unique personality. I can remember he would go through pre-practice with the linebackers. I remember because I'd go watch Dad's drill and Pablo would be doing ball drills with the linebackers because he and Fred were so tight.
Yes, that's correct.
But just tell us a little bit about you know, the other one I want to ask you about is, did you get sick before you started writing mat drills?
Actually, no, but let me start with Pablo. Obviously, and Sully attest to this, but everybody loved Pablo, man. He was just a great dude, really a great guy. And I was with him that day. You know, we had practice, and we were
It's an
It's an off week.
yeah, we had an off week. There you go. We had an open week that week, and we were thinking about trying, if we got out of practice early enough, I was going to take him home to Sarasota with me. And Herb had talked about doing that, but that fell through. And I saw him, and then somebody came, and we went out that night, and I was in Montgomery gym, and somebody came to me and said, "Hey, man, I think you need to go outside and check on your boy Pablo." So I go out there, and he's laying on the ground. He was gone, though. And but one thing I just will never forget, when we got over to the hospital, and Pastor Ken comes out and says, Pablo Lopez has died, and I lost it. Because for me, I had never had anyone close to me die. And so he was the very first person that was close that died. And it rocked me. It rocked me. Yeah. That was tough.
Yeah, I still remember being at the memorial inside the Ruby Diamonds where they had that. I still remember that was a tough day. I mean, obviously, you know, I didn't know Pablo, but in passing, but I can remember y'all's reaction that day. And but yeah, listen, man, the book is so many great memories in this thing, man. I mean,
good.
You mentioned names I had forgotten about when you start talking about Dane and Bruce Heggie. And
That's right. Because Bruce Heggie had a snake in the dorm, you know, and I lived next door to him. And one time he lost it. Oh man, I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't even sleep.
Yeah, you even got a hope on Stan Shiver.
Oh yeah, but he's a guy that's really overlooked, because I'm talking about a bad ASS. He was that.
Yeah. He was a bad man. He
was that.
You talking about Pablo?
Talking about Shive.
Oh, Shive. Yeah.
Yeah. The best poster in the history of posters.
Huh?
The best poster in the history of posters.
Correct.
The lights out
poster. Correct.
The lights out poster.
I used to have it somewhere. I don't know where it is anymore. I think it got lost in one of my moves, but I used to have it on hard stock and in a little plastic, little cardboard frame, and I had it up for years and years and years.
Hey, so how did y'all like the one he played with me?
Oh, you talking about Prime?
Yeah, because what happens is people all the time, when they found out that we were there during the same era, oh, so you played with Dion? I'm like, he played with me. I was there first.
Yeah, that's
right. I was starting when he got there, you know? Yeah, there we go, baby. There we go. There we go.
Well, listen, he's having a heck of a year.
Yeah, good. I'm happy for him. I'm excited for him. I really am.
Yep. They got a big one against Cincinnati. I think they get some bowl eligible if they win.
Yeah, that'd be big. That's going to be big for him.
Hey, Pat, let me take you back to Pablo. And speaking of rhymes, he had a little expression that he would walk around and say to people that I remember. And you might remember it. It was about, you might think I'm black by the way I be speaking, but I'm half Cuban and half Puerto Rican. You remember that?
I do.
He was like a
good memory right there, Jerry. That's good.
6'5" Prince.
Yeah,
what I thought. He looked like Prince to me.
Yeah. He was just a cool dude, man. A cool dude.
He was my road roommate.
Oh, was he?
He played. He played tackle. I played guard.
Right
back then, and so they put us together like in Thomasville. I remember going up to Thomasville on a Friday nights and sitting in the room, and after Coach Bowden had talked, and we got our Wendy's Frosty and cookie.
Right.
Watching Miami Vice, and he just the whole time just talking about, hey, bro, I know that quote. That's he's telling me all these places about Miami Vice and stuff. Yeah, man.
Because I watched Scarface with him. He's the one turned me on to that movie. You know what I mean? I had never heard of that movie until I met him.
Yeah. Paulo was the best, and you're right. He would have played.
Oh, in the NFL for
10
years.
Oh yeah, easily. Had he stayed healthy, yes, no question.
Yeah.
No question about it. No question.
Sure.
We have some studs, man. And I'll be honest with you. I touched on Florida State as much as I can, but I got Danny in the other one. Coach Bowden, McDuffie, Brad Scott. So I touch on Florida, my time at Florida State as well, because I also got to talk about me a little bit to introduce this new generation, because I hear other names about great tight ends, and you may want to. I don't debate the fans, but all you got to do is check my record. Though my record's pretty solid.
Yeah. I think any of the older generation for sure understands. Yeah, the younger generation, their curiosity doesn't take them back
they don't know their history, so they just arbitrarily blurt out names and not know your history.
It's recency.
Yeah, exactly.
Recency bias.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's never been a guy that could block like Pat. He was the best.
Reggie was just as good.
Reggie Johnson, but he was different. He was there. You were an offensive tackle in a tight end number, but you could run routes, and your catch radius was incredible.
And that's what I say. I used to say I'm a tailback in a lineman's body. That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. And a true weapon. Weapon.
Well,
in this era would be a huge weapon, right?
Oh, I know.
I loved Biscuit. When we had Biscuit, I was like, he could be another Pat Carter type.
Pat will tell you, I took a picture of Biscuit his freshman year and said he was wearing 85.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think we might have another one.
You sure did.
Yeah. I don't know why we lost him. That's a damn shame. He could have helped this team.
Yeah, because he would have been quite productive this year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he would have helped in the running game for sure.
Oh, no question about that. We needed him.
Yeah. Well, when you talk, I don't know how many. I doubt. Has there ever been a tight end in Florida State history that's been drafted higher than you? You were the second round pick.
Reggie was drafted higher than me.
Reggie was. Okay.
I think I was 32. I think Reggie was 30.
Okay.
What was Zeke Mowat? Was Zeke Mowat?
I don't.
No, he was a free agent.
Both Reggie and I were both second rounders.
Yeah.
What about Orson
Mobley? Bob Harbison got him that opportunity.
Okay. What about Orson Mobley? Did he get drafted?
Yeah, but I don't think it was as high. Yeah. Okay. That was another gifted dude that came through.
Yeah, we have a great history at tight ends, especially back then.
Yeah, we did.
I felt like Orson didn't emerge until late. He and Zeke, they weren't like you, Pat, that came in and emerged as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys it took a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I got the opportunity, though. I mean, everything just worked out perfectly. Best decision I made in my life, choosing Florida to attend Florida State University.
Yeah.
So, Pat, do you remember the first time we met?
We were on a recruit. Yeah, because was it the high school All-Star game?
Yes.
It was the high school Hey, I got a poem in the second book about that because we were so loaded on our team.
Yeah, you were.
Was that the Florida Georgia high school game?
Yeah, well, it was North-South back then.
Okay.
It was North-South back then. That was the last year doing North-South. The next year they did Florida.
Because Sammy 85 was the first.
That was the first Florida Georgia.
Yeah, that was the first Florida Georgia.
Right.
And remember Pat walking in the cafeteria, and McGowan, I don't know how he found out, but he knew your name is Wendell, and started calling you Wendell. Because me and McGowan, so Pat was on the South team. Me and Paul were on the North team.
Right.
And we all stayed at Rollins College.
Correct.
And played the game in Orlando. And so Pat walks in, and Pat being Pat is just, talking smack. Tracy Sanders was on his team.
That's right. That was Maroon, right.
Terry Grigley, and I mean, some great players for sure.
But let me tell you who was on our offense, though. Michael Irvin, Brett Perriman, Cleveland Gary, me, and Lorenzo White. So
Yeah.
can you imagine that amount of talent on one team?
Yeah.
That's why we thumped y'all too. Now y'all got thumped.
Did we get thumped?
Yes, sir. Oh, you act like you don't remember. Y'all got thumped.
I don't know if it was thumped, but yeah.
Okay.
You beat it out of his memory.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't remember it that way, but yeah.
Okay, I understand. Hey, but at the end of the day, y'all lost, right?
Yeah, I think we did.
Oh, now you're thinking y'all lost. Wow.
Hey, how was that? Oh, no. Danny McManus's
No, he was
senior year,
redshirt. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a year fast in front of us.
his senior year in high school,
Mhm.
they played that game in Gainesville. And I was at that game, and I came away so impressed with McManus in that game. He looked like Fred Flintstone or something to me with his.
That's what they called him, didn't they, Fred?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they called him Fred. Hey, I got a poem in my second book about him because I so admire the fact that, the NFL drafted him, but they didn't really give him a shot. So guess what he does? He takes his show to Canada and is in their Hall of Fame. I love him for that. I admire the hell out of that.
If Danny McManus played in this era the way the offenses are structured, that has a quick mind and a quick release.
Correct.
Oh, obviously he went up to Canada where that was more like kind of like the offense, and he set every record known to man.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm so proud of him.
Hey,
Yeah.
let me bring up another point because we're dealing with quarterbacks right now. Just so the younger people that don't know who Danny Mac was and don't know how you built that. The 87 was the year of the start of the dynasty.
Correct.
But if you remember, Danny, who could have been the starting quarterback for 3 years, he sustained a concussion, and I want to say it was at Miami. I remember
it was Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis at home.
It was Memphis.
It was Memphis, but it was
I have to remember that, Memphis.
Yeah, and it was on our no.
We were home. Yeah, we were home. It was Memphis, though.
It was a daytime game, hot as shit. I remember that.
Yeah.
But imagine if he hadn't have gotten hurt that year and lost.
Oh yeah, I've often thought of that as well. But I would have loved to seen him playing his redshirt freshman year because that was the one thing, in my opinion, that I thought we was missing was a pure passing quarterback.
Right.
Yeah, but we ran
Eric Thomas. Those guys kind of were option guys.
Yeah. Bobby was enamored with that freeze option.
Right.
He brought Art Baker into.
That's correct.
Run it.
In '84, right? Art was.
That's
there
correct. That was
84.
my freshman year. Yep.
Yeah. We ran the freeze option back then with Greg Allen and Rosie Snipes and Cleveland.
Damn, that was a good running back group.
Jones.
Yeah, that was a heck of a group right there. In and of itself. Rosie, yeah, man.
Rosie was a character now.
And Rosie's still a legend down here in Sarasota. He's still our great, and we're from the same community. He's still the greatest football player from our neighborhood.
I honestly believe he might be one of the best running backs I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't argue with you. I
mean, I'm just saying for a guy that
so talented.
So talented.
Yeah,
man.
Hey, at any rate, people right now are all concerned about it. But if you remember when Danny got hurt, it forced us to play a true freshman in Chip Ferguson.
Correct.
And that's what we're doing right now. And you all survived it. I mean, Chip, you made what you could with what you had. And Chip had some productive days, but
he did.
You got back to Danny Mac, and 87 happened.
Right. But I don't know if you guys remember 86, Coach Bowden almost left.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because remember after the Birmingham game, we was in. I don't remember the bowl, but it was in Birmingham.
All-American.
There you go.
Bill.
I was kind of scared. I was like, he might be leaving. And I'm glad he didn't, obviously, But man, I was a little scared there at one point because that was his dream job.
And I think you all are part of the reason he didn't.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, but if you think about it, he made that decision, and that was the first year of his 15-year run after that,
Exactly.
So
What
he knew what he
it would have been if he'd have left and didn't get to fulfill that.
Yeah, that would have been something.
All right, man. Well, we'd love to have you back, Pat, and with Volume 2 and then Volume 3.
I got you, man. soon as I have them out, man, I love to come back by and visit. And thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and listen, if you're listening to us right now, we've been talking with Pat Carter, former FSU tight end, who has a book of poetry. You said 24, right, Pat?
Yeah, 24 poems. 24 on Amazon. You can look it up. All American poet, Wendell Patrick Carter. And it's just going to introduce you to the guys that I played along with and some of the events and places that we participated in.
Yeah, well, listen, particularly if you went to Florida State in the 80s or pulled from in the 80s, it's going to take you back in time. A lot of cool memories just come up just for me reading it. Again, I can't figure out how to get this off the screen. Yeah, just a lot of cool memories reading this thing, and I really appreciate you coming on short notice. And obviously, it's always great to talk to you and see you. I'm glad everything's going well. And yeah, like Jerry said, anytime you want to come on, even if it's not to talk about your books, we love getting people on here. Mark's always with us. We love getting people telling stories on Mark. And I'm sure you've got a couple on.
Always good to see my classmate too. It's good to see my classmate.
I think we got McManus on one day years ago.
Okay.
We tried to get McGowan on. We've been unsuccessful there. I don't think he'd say anything anyway.
Yeah, Mac don't do too much talking.
He would just headbutt the screen.
Mac don't do too much talking.
Hey, by the way, just since we got you on, do you ever know what you mentioned Gerald Nichols? Do you ever know what became of Gerald? Where's he at?
No, I've been looking for him because some years ago he was down here in Sarasota.
I think he's still down there somewhere.
Okay, but then I've been asking people, but nobody seems to know. So if you guys hear anything, let me know because I would love to catch up with him.
Yeah, I haven't seen him. I run into Ionata every now and then because Florida State's recruiting one of his sons, Joey. I haven't seen John, but I see some of the guys from those days. I ran into across Dane one time since I've been back in town. Mm-hmm. He was here for a game, but I've run into. I've seen Shive a time or two, but I've seen McGowan a time or two, but that's really been about it. But man. But hey, thanks for coming on. Thanks for
having me,
guy. Appreciate
real quick, Pat. Did you ever go against John Ionata?
Say that again.
Was John Ionata?
John was the tight tackle, and I was the tight end. And it's ironic that you brought him up because John was a tough guy, and I kind of emulated John. I wanted to be like John.
Yeah. John Dillinger in a football helmet.
That's it, in headgear. Dillinger in headgear.
Yep, that's it. Dillinger in headgear. McDuffie.
Dillinger in headgear.
All right, guys.
Great.
We go all day.
Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Thanks, Pat and Mark.
Thank you, guys.
Mark's on the side of the road somewhere between Memphis and Nashville. We've held him up for about an hour. I want to thank him for that. And obviously, please join us on Saturday at Glory Days. If you're in Tallahassee, not going to the Miami game, we will have the Osceola Glory Days watch party. Start at 6 o'clock, I believe is what Jerry said. It's on Capitol Circle Northeast. We've all got smartphones. Should be easy to find. But Jerry will be there along with Nick. I will try to get there. And I'll be there probably till halftime before I leave, come back to do the post-game show. Then Mark and I will be with you live around 10:30 to talk a little bit about Florida State, Miami. Hopefully we're talking about an upset. If not, we'll make it quick. We won't belabor the point. But and then obviously please go to theosceola.com and check out all our content there, theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. But we will see everybody on Saturday night, and hopefully we're talking about an upset of the number 6 or 7th ranked Hurricanes. And what we do. Y'all have a great afternoon.
You too.
See you soon.
See you guys. Bye-bye, guys.